Hi, I'm John, and welcome back to Dice Paper Miniatures. In this episode, I kick off a new series I'm working on that's featuring each of the 18 legions that players can play in the upcoming Warhammer the Horus Heresy. Now, the framework I'm using for this series is basically looking at what the Warhammer community is presenting in each of these 18 articles. The lore, the general look and feel of the legion, and of course, its rule mechanics that they're willing to tease at this point. And then maybe down the road, I might have a follow-up as to how accurate I think that these articles presented each of the individual legions. But that would be a series for another time. All right, so again, that's the premises or framework for this series. I'm really excited to get started. And in this episode, we're featuring the Death Guard, which looks quite a bit different in the Heresy versus what they turned out to look like in 40K. All right, let's begin. All right, so here we are with the Death Guard, and admittedly, this is one of the more gnarly looking legions for sure. I do find this title kind of funny. The Death Guard trade glory for guts, lots of guts. They're sickeningly fragile, overcomplicated strategies, and indulgent logistical planning. The best Astartes don't need a lumbering supply chain or a complex chain of command. You can drop them into the trenches with nothing but a knife and a gun, and they make do. Those highly illegal chemical weapons, merely resting in the armory for safekeeping. And it goes on. If you're just joining us, we're continuing our series of uncompromisingly unbiased reviews for each of the 18 Space Marine legions involved in the Horus Heresy. Today it's all about the greatest legion of them all, the obstinate, the inexorable, the unwashed Death Guard. Side note, I got through that in one take. Just saying, you do it. See how far you get. All right. Like I said, admittedly, I think the Death Guard are a cool looking legion. They get all sorts of just obscene by the time they get into full blown Nurgle blessings, but I think during the Heresy era, they're really neat. I mean, neat's probably not the right word. Gross, but cool, like a cool gross, if there's such a thing. Okay, so the 14th Legion were drawn from the belligerent clans of Old Albia, alongside the similarly doughty Iron Hands. These no-nonsense warriors had the genetic memory of sheet rain running through their core. Sheet rain, yeah. I think they meant shit rain. That's more appropriate. Let's be honest. And were dubbed the Dusk Raiders, a nod to the Albion tactic of mounting ground attacks in the eerie shadows of twilight. While other legions were waiting around as the Emperor's personal attack dogs, the Dusk Raiders got on with the job, an attitude that only intensified when Mortarion arrived. Under their new Primarch, the 14th Legion sailed from warzone to warzone, not stopping except to refuel. They barely even painted their armor. Battle damage is cooler than any gilded badge. I mean, they're not entirely wrong. It definitely looks cool during the Heresy era, for sure. Funny though, for a group that doesn't care about the color or cleanliness of their armor, why they even bother with white? They could have just easily gotten away with just either plain primer or just like shit brown and call it a day. But all kidding aside, it's cool. By having it white and then looking like crap, it really shows the juxtaposition of what you would expect a Space Marine to be versus how much they don't give a crap, literally, and just it speaks a lot to the character of the Legion for sure. And before I forget, I think the sculpt on this Primarch is really pretty cool. In a lot of ways, I kind of dig this more than the full-blown, the Nurgle version for 40K. Aside from the face and the hood's a little off to me, everything else about it I really do like. Yeah, it's a neat sculpt for sure. Mortarion encouraged his relentless approach with his own bare-bone style. His soldiers learned to fight any foe in any atmosphere with the most basic weapons or none at all. If it was good enough for their gene sire, it would be good enough for his gene sons. Mortarion had to march to battle uphill every day in acid rain without power armor. Apparently, Mortarion was the grandpa of Primarchs. You forgot to add the snow, but good enough. We'll give you a pass on the snow one. The Primarch also renamed his legion after the army he'd led to the toxic peaks of Barbarous, some of whom joined him in its ranks. The Dusk Raiders were old news. Now the Death Guard stood ready to cleanse the galaxy of vile aliens, impure witches, and bestial, slavering mutants. Mutants. I'm assuming they never made it to Ball. Yeah, these look great in the Death Guard colors, for sure. All right, so let's check out those rules here. The Death Guard believe in going back to basics, winning foot-slogging fights through attrition and sheer force of will. Soaring into battle with fancy assault packs and other untrustworthy war gear, while not off limits, is an infrequent tactic. Instead, they're remorseless in their advance. After following the Barbaran cardio regimen, there's no objective these soldiers can't reach on foot and no enemy they can't dismantle, with their bare hands if need be. All right, let's check out Remorseless. A model with this special rule that does not have the cavalry unit type or artillery unit subtype ignores any modifiers or restrictions on moving during the movement phase, including modifiers imposed by terrain or restrictions from rules such as pinning, which would normally stop them from moving, as long as the model does not run or make use of another alternative form of movement, such as activating a jump pack, disembarking, or deploying via deep strike. That's pretty cool. Okay, furthermore, as long as the model has not run or used another alternative form of movement in the controlling player's movement phase, it is counted as stationary when making shooting attacks until the start of the controlling player's next turn. That actually could be a really big deal. That is cool. Okay, this special rule does not affect whether or not a model may make a charge and does not allow models with the vehicle unit type to ignore the effects of an immobilized result on the vehicle damage table, but does allow a model with the vehicle unit type to move even when under the effects of the crew stun result or the vehicle damage table. All right, so I really dig this special rule. It's got great flavor in terms of lore. From the game's mechanics, it really screws with the opponents if they have strategies of trying to pin or slow the opponent down to get to objectives. Remorseless just says like, nope, not having it. We're moving forward, and you can't do jack about it. I really like this, and in a bit of an abstract way, it makes their shooting more consistent because it's not being penalized by moving. That's really neat. It makes me wonder if I think there might be some certain weapons that cannot be fired if they moved. So does this rule allow them to move with like heavy weapons? Kind of a feeling that's the case. And if that's true, that really gives the Death Guard a huge advantage if that's a thing. Yeah, I'll be curious. If you know specifically if you can move with heavy weapons and or not suffer a penalty like you normally would because of this rule with heavy weapons, let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious about that. All right, so it goes on. While some legions stock up on dusty and unreliable plasma weapons, the 14th Legion prefers innovative and volatile chemical weapons. Imagine a water gun that melts flesh into excoriating ooze. Oh, nasty. These things are so horrible that the Emperor outright banned them, and considering the sorts of weapons he does allow, you'd be right to assume that they're unconscionably grim. All right, this armory saw the Death Guard sent to more and more unpleasant battlefields. Nobody wants their new backyard turned into a toxic swamp. Of course, conquering such hellish planets called for even nastier weaponry. It was a vicious cycle, and a viscous one. Ba-dum-bum. All right, so let's see what these chemical-based weapons are really like. Well, for starters, I can tell they're all template range. That's pretty crazy. So like AoE heavy. The Alchem pistol is a strength 3, not terrible. Pistol 1, Flesh Bane, and gets hot. Again, without knowing what the Flesh Bane does or gets hot, it's hard to speak to that. I'm assuming gets hot is a penalty of sorts. Flesh Bane probably does some horrible stuff to the opponent, so that's an upside. The Flamer, strength 4, AP of 5. Wow. That is a nasty, nasty Flamer. However, the heavy Alchem Flamer has almost the same AP, but it's a strength 5. That's super cool. And then the Alchem Cannon, strength 6, and the type is heavy 1, torrent 8. Holy smokes. Yeah, these alchem-based weapons are nasty. I mean, I think this holds true too for Warhammer 40k. They're just a solid chapter in 40k, and they seem to be just a very solid legion for Horus Heresy. The ability to not be stopped while moving, a really nasty attack. Yeah, these guys are cool. Again, we have Mortarion from the homeworld Barbarous. Very cool. Scattered across the stars, each Primarch was molded by the world on which they landed. Alas, the infant Mortarion was washed up on a poison-choked Barbarous. Yeah, that can't be healthy. The humans on this miserable little ball of toxins were ruled by inhuman psychic overlords, the greatest of whom, named Nakar, adopted and named Mortarion. Much like his ironclad brother Perturabo, the young Primarch proved a less than grateful surrogate son, though admittedly his adoptive dad was an ancient horror, raising him to be a general for his undead armies. Holy crap. Okay. Some of this, admittedly, I did know, but not to the full extent. Escaping his father's grip, Mortarion discovered the humans who lived in the venomous valleys below and recognized them as his true species, albeit much smaller for some reason. His fellow humans were understandably suspicious of this towering ghoul, but he won them over with a shift in the fields, and soon turned his harvesting scythe against the overlords, taking heads in a bloody rebellion. On the cusp of Mortarion's victory against his witch lord father, the Emperor arrived and challenged him to take on the final overlord alone. When Mortarion fell, overwhelmed by Barbarous's most potent toxins, the master of mankind swooped in and stole the kill right out from his lost son's hands. That probably didn't go over so well. Apparently not. This slight wormed its way into the Primarch's rotten heart, along with a hatred of psychers, a love of poisons, and all manner of other poor parental influences that he passed wholesale on to his sons. Of course he did. So in the heresy, with the seeds of doubt well and truly sown, Mortarion was an easy recruit for the War Master. Horus was among the few Primarchs the reticent Pale King ever got on with, the other being the erratic Night Haunter, of course. Presumably the two bonded over a love of Halloween decorations. Yep, sounds right. In the Isvan system, the Death Guard became the immovable object that the rather more resistible Loyalist forces broke against during the drop site massacre. They indulged in some truly heinous acts along the way, unleashing virus bombs on Isvan 3 to decimate Loyalist factions, including those from their own legion. Mortarion tried to reach out to his biker brother above the ruined world of Prospero, but the Khan knew which way the wind was blowing. Must have been downwind and realized that stuff smells like shit. Uh-huh. The two came to blows, and though Jagatai's sharp tongue did more damage than his sword. Oof. Oh. No. Anyways, Mortarion decided that discretion was the better part of valor. When next the brothers met, neither would back down, and the odds would be firmly in the Pale King's favor. Yeah, again, very cool color scheme. So, even though he turned his back on his dad, again, Mortarion hadn't yet accepted his adoption by a new father figure, or rather, grandfather figure. First Captain Callus Typhon would see to that. A psyker who'd kept his abilities secret from his Primarch, understandably enough, Typhon stranded his legion in the Warp, where he became a living host to one of Nurgle's most potent poxes, the Destroyer Plague. What a bastard. Without putting too fine a point on it, this went right through them. It turns out walk it off and tough it out doesn't work well for a demonic illness, and the Death Guard were forced to accept Nurgle in their hearts and lungs and spleens, bones, bowels, etc. Gross. By the time of the Siege of Terra, the newly empowered Death Guard and their demon prince Mortarion waged a war of disease and destruction on the throne world, even after the Khan made good on his promise of a rematch. A little bit more Legion lore here. Whether you love them at their stubborn best or their reeking worst, there's a fecund crop, oh man, of Death Guard fiction to consume. No one wants to eat shit if you got the stomach for it. Yep, nope, nada. All right, so Flight of the Eisenstein follows hot on the heels of the opening trilogy and follows the Death Guard loyalist Nathaniel Garro and his 70 comrades on a tense mission to bring word of Horus's betrayal at Isfahan to Terra. Actually, that was a really good series. Because, yeah, I do think the Death Guard overall were a really cool legion. It's just Mortarion and I guess to some extent Typhon just really screwed him over. And now they're walking piles of crap. They clearly got the shitty end of that stick. So many puns. I know they're bad, but I still think they're funny. All right. The buried dagger digs deep into the rotten core of Mortarion's hypocrisy. Yikes. Exposing his own dabblings with the warp and the consequences of his defection to the War Master. If you want more Primarch action, you'll be happy to know that the Demon Prince is getting his own novel, Mortarion, the Pale King, very soon. There you go. And of course a painting guide, which is probably one of the few factions you could like just throw up, on your model and people would think, yeah, that's perfect. I don't recommend it. I'm just saying you could. All right. Obviously, I like to have a lot of fun with this particular legion because, yeah, they're gross. And they've embraced their grossness. So there is that. But mechanically, as far as the rules go, this I think is a great legion to get started with. Not overly complicated, not really a high ceiling by no means, and not really a low floor. If you mess up, you're not going to be, hugely penalized for it. Just point them in the direction you want to go and just start walking. How competitive they end up being in the long run, a little hard to tell. Like with anything, in the hands of the right player, probably almost any legion can take the win. So there is that. But what are your thoughts? Are you digging this legion? What are some pros and cons for you? Consider leaving those in the comments below. That'd be really great. I really enjoy getting a chance to read those and interact with you all on those things. That's kind of why I do it. But that said, if you do enjoy this content and you haven't subscribed yet, now's as good a time as any, as well as hitting that notification bell and sharing this content with your friends. It really does help with the growth of the channel, and it's greatly appreciated. And as I mentioned before, I have a number of these Legion videos now on my channel, so please consider checking those out and providing feedback to those as well. Well, that's it for this one. As always, I hope you're doing well. Be safe, take care, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.